Welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Jake Reid. I'm the Youth and Education Manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, the most inspiring place on earth. We are so excited to be live again here from Canton, Ohio on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Facebook page to bring you another exciting edition of our Before the Snap series. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, we are so excited to have you tuning in today. You're in store for a really great program to teach you all about the careers in and around the NFL, careers that, when we even looked into these, we didn't even know existed. So it's really cool to see all the different careers in and around the NFL and each have their own unique impact to the game of football that you see on TV in the stands. If you're lucky enough to be there this year, every Sunday, Monday, every day of the week this year, throughout the NFL season. If you're tuned with us again, thank you so much for being a repeat customer of our Before the Snap series. We can't wait to bring you another exciting and excellent program today. A little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which have their own unique impact on the game of football that not only make our Hall of Famers great on the field, they make them great people off the field. And I'm excited to hear how those values today impact the career decisions and the career path of our special guest today, Ms. Ilsa Marden. And we'll get to her right here in a second. But first, I'd like to thank her for being a part of the program today and everything she does for the game of football. And she might not know it, all of the things she does for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the impact that all of the people not only play the game, but work in the game of football as well, have their own unique impact. So thank you so much for everything you've done for the game of football and everything you do for us here at the Hall of Fame. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators who are allowing us to come into their classroom today. We know this school year has been very unique and rough in some instances, but we're happy to come alongside you and really help teach your students a little bit about careers in and around the NFL and truly all of sports. Lastly, I'd like to thank our students. Without this program today, without you guys, it doesn't happen. We are so excited to have you tuned in from high schools and colleges all across the country. If you're watching us today, make sure in the comment section to leave where you're from, what college you're going to. Make sure we see all the representation from all the great universities we have tuning in today. If you do have a question, don't be afraid to put it in that comment section as well. Nathan Martin, the Youth and Education Coordinator here at the Hall of Fame, is in our Gold Jacket Lounge set up, monitoring all of those questions, and we'll be going to him periodically to ask some of those questions. So make sure you're getting those questions in. Let us know where you're from. So tell us your name, your school, what city you're in, and then go ahead and ask that question, and we'll do our best to make it a part of the program today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Ms. Ilsa Marden. She is in her 8th season with the Baltimore Ravens, overseeing all tentpole events, entertainment programs, as well as a pregame and halftime entertainment. So everything that you sit in your seat to watch when the game isn't playing, she's got a hand in it. Her team is responsible for the planning, strategy, promotion, and execution of events such as the NFL Draft, the Beach Bash, training camp, kickoff week, and a Purple Evening. I'm sure all of which we'll hear more about today. With over 600 appearances in 2019 by Ravens cheerleaders, their mascot Poe, and the Baltimore Marching Ravens, she and her team are responsible for impacting the Baltimore community and reaching over 1 million fans outside of game day. Prior to joining the Ravens organization, she spent 3 years at Under Armour right there in Baltimore as well, as a sports marketing customer service associate, where she supported their professional female Olympic and NBA athletes. She attended the University of Oregon, go Ducks, playing Division I lacrosse and receiving a bachelor's in a BA in business administration with a concentration in sports business. So without further ado, enough from me. I'd like to welcome our special guest today, Ms. Ilsa Marden. Ilsa, welcome to the program today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I wish I had this when I was in college to be able to listen to and help me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No problem. We are excited to have you as well. And we're going to start this off just to tell everybody, kind of give them a 10,000-foot view on some of the things you do on a day-to-day basis with your job title. I know we touched a little bit there in your intro about some of those things, but can you kind of talk about, what does a day-to-day life, and we'll say it's in a normal NFL season. What does a day-to-day look like for you? Some of the things you do, some of the things you handle, and stuff like that.
Sure. I mean, it really varies depending on the time of year, but as you said, I oversee all of our events and entertainment. So for us, we pride ourselves on doing a lot of events in the off season to give our fans touch points outside of the football season. So a lot of it is that planning and strategizing and budgeting and executing our events and figuring out how can we engage with our fans outside of the football field and bring them some excitement, especially in that off season time and year round after that. And then our entertainment groups, a big part of that too is getting them out in the community. Our players, especially pre-COVID, their schedules are already limited. So they can't do all the appearance requests that we get for them. So our entertainment groups are that next best thing. And then they're the best ambassadors we have out in the community. So a lot of that, the day-to-day is also getting them out there and getting them to do appearances and be with our fans where our players can't be.
And I think, especially in today's world, that's such an important thing to do because, with COVID and the pandemic, everybody's kind of looking for that sense of normalcy, and being able to provide maybe a virtual event or an appearance by a player that's on an iPad rolling around on a Segway. Because I've seen a bunch of teams doing that, things like that, just to provide that connection to the community. Because it is, I believe, working in youth and education here at the Hall of Fame, we are involved a lot with our community, and being able to show that impact. And I'm not gonna lie, it feels really good to be out there and seeing the fans and seeing the kids interact with your organization as a whole, whether it be the players or the mascot or the cheerleader. Sometimes the mascot's more popular than everybody.
That's absolutely true in Baltimore too.
So talking about that community involvement, there's got to be a part of your job that you love the most. And the old saying goes, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do. So, and I think people who work in a community aspect kind of feel that a little bit more. So what do you love most about your job, especially when it comes to working with people in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite part of my job is just that we get to work directly with our fans. The events we put on or the appearances that our entertainment groups are going to are for our fans. So we get to be up close and personal with them year round, whether it's at an event, if it's on game day, or if it's at an appearance. And I mean, our fans are passionate in Baltimore. They tell us what they love, what they don't love. So that's another part that I love is we get immediate feedback, whether it's at an event or an appearance, of what they've loved that we do or what they don't like, so that we can make those changes immediately for our next event or the next day, or whatever it may be. The engagement with our fans is definitely one of my favorite things, that we get to be so up close and personal with them and get to kind of feel what they're feeling and their excitement for their team in Baltimore.
And kind of going on that and off the topic we had there about the pandemic, everybody had to adjust this year. So how did that for you, especially when you're putting on events, you're traveling out in the community, you're taking the mascot cheerleaders and players to different places in the community. How did that impact your job this year? And what were some of the ways you had to adjust and kind of, plan, for the future, not knowing, how fluid the situation was going to be?
Yeah, being in live events is not exactly COVID friendly, of encouraging a big group of people to come and gather, whether it's at our stadium or an offsite event. So yeah, the pandemic hit us hard as far as, my team and us trying to put on events for our fans that in person, was not an option at all. We just did an in-person drive-through rally for our playoffs, and the thrill that our team had of, like, even though people are just driving through, they're staying in their cars, we're like, we're having an in-person event. This is amazing. Like, we haven't had this in a year. So it's definitely impacted us, and we really had to pivot. I mean, early on, the draft being the first thing that, the biggest event that happened early on in the pandemic. And we really had to figure out, how can we take what we normally do and put on for our fans in person, and how can we make that virtual, and that it doesn't seem, cheesy, or, like, what would we even want to tune into? Early on, I think it was different as the pandemic progressed, and people were still working from home, and we still had normal events that we were trying to figure out, how can we make these virtual. We even had to adjust them because Zoom fatigue became a real thing, and it's like, okay, what might have worked back in April might not work now, because people aren't as willing to hop onto a Zoom and watch people, just talking. We had to try and figure out, how can we make it more engaging and more interactive. So the pandemic definitely had an impact on us, and it's still going to, I think. I mean, it's nice that the vaccine's coming out now, but we still don't know what that means for 2021. And again, now we're in another position where the draft is kind of our next big thing, and we're trying to figure out based on the success of our playoff, drive-through rally, is there a portion of that we can apply to the draft? Or is there some way we can kind of do a hybrid of something as safe as possible in person, but still maybe a virtual component? But I think that virtual component is probably going to be here to stay for a while. I know for us, one thing that we really liked is we were able to interact with fans not in Baltimore, which, if it was an in-person event, they obviously wouldn't be able to come to. So that was something that was a really big takeaway for us, of the reach and engagement we had got to be more nationwide and even, worldwide, with some of our fans in the UK or in Mexico that got to tune into things that they otherwise normally wouldn't have been able to experience without flying here and spending a lot of money. So that's something that we've definitely discussed on our side, of trying to figure out ways to keep that going year round, even after, post COVID, whenever that'll be. Those are definitely components that we're looking to keep around.
Yeah, and I think that creativity is such an important thing nowadays. And you always ask, you get the question, what do students need to know going into an interview? And I've always told students this year that you need to bring some sort of creativity to the table, a new idea, a new way of doing things, because that is something that every employer, every organization, sports, not in sports, whatever it is, went through that this year. So being able to provide that sort of creativity you were talking about is very important. We'll dive into some of those key pieces of advice you might give students that, like you mentioned at the beginning, you wish you had something like this in college, to learn about different careers. But we've got our first Facebook question. So I'm going to throw it out to the Gold Jacket Lounge here in Canton, Ohio, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, to Nathan Martin, who's got that question ready to go. So Nathan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for sending it out here to me. And I'll be honest, it's kind of a question. So we got a comment on Facebook from Joseph. It looks like Joseph's actually a co-worker of yours, Ilsa, there at the Ravens. And they just said, go Ducks, as soon as Jake mentioned Oregon. So, that had me thinking, what kind of lessons did you learn attending Oregon and playing Division I lacrosse that you still use today? And I would encourage our students that are watching, submit your questions. We want to get you guys involved with the program today. But back to that question, what did you learn from that experience in college playing D1 lacrosse that you can still use today working with the Ravens?
Sure. Well, first of all, go Ducks. I think the biggest lesson, as a student athlete in college that definitely transitioned into the workforce was time management. I joined when I went to University of Oregon. That was the second year of their program being Division I lacrosse. So we were still very new. And at that time, lacrosse was still very new on the West Coast. So we had only 6 teams in our conference, and our conference consisted of all the Division I lacrosse teams west of the Mississippi River. So pretty much half the country was our conference. So we had to travel everywhere. So I spent quite a lot of time on the plane, traveling back and forth the entire year in the fall and in the spring. So for me, time management is definitely one of the biggest things I learned in college that I translated, into the workforce, and with that prioritization, because with travel and games and practices, as any student athlete, there's not much time then for anything outside of that after classes, when you factor in homework and projects and exams and all that. So time management and prioritization were definitely the biggest things that I've applied into the workforce. But, and other ones that are definitely stick out are leadership and communication. Those are really big ones that, I think will apply to anything. And then I'd probably also say, strategizing and data analysis, when we talk about, watching film and talking about your opponents and breaking that down and how we can beat them, that's stuff that I can definitely apply into the job right now.
Yeah, I think all of those are really important. And time management is something that I think if you ask anybody, we all would say, yeah, I could probably get a little bit better at that. There's ways I could improve no matter where you're at in your career or your life. So that's something that you really would have to learn. But like I said, I encourage the students, get involved, send your questions in. But I'm going to send it back to Jake to keep this conversation going.
All right. Thanks, Nathan. As you said, put those questions in there. I see some popping up here on the feed beside me. Keep submitting those questions. And like I said at the beginning, we'll do our best to make sure we get those in as part of the program. I want to jump into the football side of things. And you mentioned all these great community events that you get to do and interacting with the fans. But I can say also working in the sports industry, as someone who does that, you get to do some pretty cool things that not a lot of people get to do. So, looking back on your 8 years with the Ravens, is there a moment, a game, an event that stands out to you as like, I was there or I got to take part in that? What would that moment be for you?
I'd probably have to say one of the best memories I have was back in 2016 when I had the honor of traveling overseas with our cheerleaders and our mascot to go support our troops that were stationed in Bahrain and in Djibouti, Africa. My brother-in-law is in the Navy, so the military is definitely near and dear to my heart. All of our salute to service games are my favorite games to plan and produce. So definitely that trip with Armed Forces Entertainment in 2016 is an experience I'll never forget, being able to see our troops and what life is like for them overseas and bringing as little of a piece of reality and home over to them to watch the Super Bowl with them was something I'll never forget.
And talking about that, if you're a Ravens fan, you truly have to talk about some of the greats. And, you were a part of the team, after that they won their Super Bowl, that you came in the year after. You didn't get to take part in all that exciting stuff, but you still got to be there. And, part of our job here at the Hall of Fame is to, preserve that history from those big moments. And we're lucky enough to have our coworker Kara, who's outside in the museum right now in front of a very special artifact from that very game. So Kara, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, everybody, and welcome everyone to the Lamar Hunt Super Bowl Gallery, where we highlight the greatest moments from the greatest games in NFL history. As Jake said, my name is Kara, and I'm the senior video producer and chief audio engineer here at the Hall. And today, we are in front of the jersey and the gloves worn by Ravens legend Ray Lewis when the franchise won Super Bowl 47. This was special for the city of Baltimore as they captured their second ever Super Bowl, and one of football's all-time greatest, Ray Lewis, finished his career on top of the championship. So you joined the Ravens a year after this win. What was it like for you to join an organization with such recent success and the stability of people like head coach John Harbaugh, GM and Hall of Famer Ozzie Newsome, and others?
I mean, it was exciting. I actually came in, I joined the Ravens in that January. So I came in just as during the playoff run. So I was actually fortunate to be around for all the excitement. And it's a time. I mean, I grew up in Baltimore. I was a Ravens fan before I was working with them. So for me, it was really, really special to be a part of it. Even though I had just joined the team and, at that point, as anyone could imagine in the playoff run, it's just kind of all hands on deck. And what can you do? That I remember my first few months on the job, I wasn't even doing my job yet. I was just helping with whatever needed to be done to get ready for a trip to the Super Bowl. And then while we were there, so for me, that was super exciting and thrilling, and was very appreciative to be a part of that and get to experience it even still as a new employee. And then, kind of riding that high afterwards, there was a lot of excitement going into that 2013 season that, we were just trying to take advantage of and keep the momentum building with our fans and build on that of yet 2 Super Bowls. And at that point, we hadn't even been there for 20 years yet, that was really impressive to have 2 Super Bowls within 12 years. That was awesome. That's something that I'll never forget too.
Definitely. I can only imagine the momentum and the kind of the energy that would have surrounded the Ravens, especially for you. It's your hometown team. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Kara. Thanks for coming live from museum. You heard it there. You got the video playing in the background, all the live videos we're showing, just to kind of give you an insight on what we do here every day in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And one thing you mentioned there, I kind of want to touch on is you said, you started the job and you weren't even doing what your job description said. And I think when it comes to sports, especially when you're in high school and college, finding those little things to do that help you become the best person, the best employee you can be is very important. Sometimes you got to suck it up, hey, all right, I'll go get the copies. Yeah, I'll go get you guys coffee. But, you're in the organization and you're a part of something, you're part of a big team. And, so what advice would you have to somebody who might be in high school, who are, they love sports, they don't know what they want to do exactly? What would your advice to them to kind of find that path that they want to go down for ultimately their final career?
Yeah, I think, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was to find something you enjoy doing. You're more effective when you enjoy what you're doing. And, sometimes it takes a while to figure out what your passion is, but to never give up on that journey, because you said it in the beginning, if your job is what you enjoy doing, then you never feel like you're working a day in your life. And I think that really, really rings true of don't give up on whatever your passion is. And explore every avenue you can to figure out if it really does suit you and if it is your passion or not. But don't just put that to the side and settle for something less. So that would definitely be a piece of advice that I would give is just always follow your passion.
Now for you, you had the sports business degree, which, a lot of people who work in sports do end up with. But the cool thing about that is it's so broad. you can do so many different things under that umbrella of sport business. So how ultimately did you end up on the event side and the entertainment side of that instead of, like the marketing or the advertising or the social media? Was events and event planning always a passion of yours, a strength of yours? How did you ultimately end up down that event path?
It's funny. I never really thought I was going to be in events or entertainment. I'm definitely a very detail-oriented person and very organized. So I think, it definitely came naturally. When a former coworker left in that position, then they were looking to fill. I definitely, it piqued my interest for sure, because that was something that I was like, this could be right up my alley. I'm detail-oriented, I'm organized. So and working directly with our fans, that I was like, this is a no-brainer to me and something that I know I would love. But I don't think when I was in college, I don't think I thought that I would be on the event side. I actually thought for a while I wanted to be on the agency side and work on advertising. But thankfully, I had done an informational interview with someone who worked in that career field. And when I talked to them and picked their brain, I was like, okay, this is not for me. This is not what I want to do. And I'm so glad that I found that out now instead of down the road and trying to find a career in that field and then be miserable in a job. So, I don't think events was something I thought at the start, but now where I am, I can't imagine being anywhere else. And it's definitely my passion, being with fans and putting on events for them and seeing their joy and excitement and, what engagement we can bring with them to the team, if our players are there or not. It's definitely rewarding.
And I think that's one very unique thing about working in sports is that, you have events and entertainment, but it's not that you just do events and entertainment. There's so much more that goes in, especially in that field, to where there's so much planning and logistics. It's like if someone thinks of events, they think, all right, they're just throwing a bunch of huge parties, having a good old time, every day they go to work. But I think that's a cool thing. Now you will have your jobs that, that is your sole focus, is what your job title is. But, we see a lot of that in our department here at the Hall of Fame. I'm sure you do as well, to where you see kind of a representation of so many different bits and pieces of other everyday jobs that people have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we are a football team, but it really is a team atmosphere and environment that, I fall under our marketing team, and we definitely all are always supporting each other because, we're obviously still a small organization, that there's only so many of us. So you definitely are doing tasks, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, especially on game day. It's all hands on deck and no job is beneath you. Everyone is always, whatever we need to do to get the job done. So you're definitely helping out with other areas with whoever needs it at the time.
Speaking of other team members, I'm going to throw it back to Nathan Marden here in our Gold Jacket Lounge, who's got another great question. I am sure of it from our Facebook audience. So Nathan, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, for sending here again. And you guys are sending in great questions. We've got several, and I'm going to kind of combine two different ones that we got from Joel, who attends UCF down in Florida, and Darlena from Michigan. And the question, if I kind of merge it together, is basically what kind of internships are available with NFL franchises if you're a student looking to, take that route? And then what kind of advice would you offer, Ilsa, to somebody who's trying to get an internship during this pandemic still right now?
So as far as the Ravens, because it does vary from every team, a lot of people think we're all structured the same and we offer the same types of positions, but every NFL team is different. So as far as the Ravens go, we do offer, quite a range of internships. Training camp being one of the biggest opportunities, especially in the marketing department that we offer. We typically have about 10 to 12 interns over the summer assisting us with the execution of our training camp and in being, our ambassadors with our fans that come every day. Pre-COVID, not sure what it's going to look like this year, but pre-COVID, we would host over 1,000 fans a day. So we would need the staff to help us to be able to welcome those guests, make sure everything is running smoothly at camp, autograph sessions, you name it, VIPs. Those interns would help us with that. And then we do have a variety of internships that go season long. So typically a June to, whenever the season ends, hopefully a February. But those, almost every department has at least one internship, and it just, again, varies by department as to what the focus of it is. So that kind of gives you an idea of what internships we offer. And then my advice for those in college or in high school right now looking for internships, I would definitely say use LinkedIn as a tool. If you see someone with a career that is of interest to you or a company that they work for, reach out to them to pick their brains again on their career. And if it's something that interests you, to see, because that can then lead to sparks of internships and switching over to that topic. And then you'd hopefully be top of mind for them if something were to pop up. But I would just say try and get any experience you can right now, and even if it's unpaid, paid, to me, it doesn't matter. It's the experience that people are looking for. So try and figure out any way that you can get some experience. A lot of people are getting really creative right now and trying to do internships virtually too, and remote or working remotely. So a lot of companies are starting to pivot with that as well. And I would say just still, try and find any experience you can.
I think, building on those experiences is something very important. And those experiences can come out of networking. And you're stressed. It's stressed so much in college about how important it is to network and how important it is to build those relationships, because those people you build relationships are the people one day that may be hiring you, down the road. Or you're going to be coworkers or whatever it might be. So for somebody who might be in college right now, who's kind of in that world, in that, hey, you got to network, hey, you got to build relationships. What are some advice that you had to them? You mentioned reaching out on LinkedIn. What are some other things that they can do, and how can they become more comfortable with it? Because that's something, when I was in college, I struggled with. I didn't want to bother anybody. I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to be annoying to anybody by going up and just kind of talking to them. They were there to do something else. I didn't want to bother them. But what advice can you give to somebody who might be in those shoes, looking to build their network and build relationships?
I would say definitely don't be afraid to reach out. I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, and especially right now during COVID has been, a great time that I've been able to do a lot more of those informational interviews with people than I would have had an opportunity to pre-COVID. So definitely you always have the no, so why not get the yes and reach out to them and see if they respond, and we'll give you, usually people don't mind talking about themselves, so they'll usually give you, even if it's just 10-15 minutes, they'll give you that much time hopefully to give you, or to answer any questions you might have, or give you any insight onto what their career path was or their advice for getting into that company or that industry. But a big thing with that, I think, is the follow-up and keeping those connections. And for me, something that always sticks out when I, do any of those phone calls or Zooms with any people I meet on LinkedIn is how they follow up with me. Are they paying attention to what's going on in my industry or what's going on with the Ravens? Or are they just reaching out and asking, hey, are your internships posted yet? Or do you have any jobs yet? You'd be surprised, but it happens. So take the extra time and look at did they just play a game? Did they win? Was anything big happening? Did they just put on an event? Make your conversation with them relevant so that they know, they're like, wow, they really took the time to see what's going on in my life and my career, and actually are interested in it, that this person definitely goes above and beyond. And that will stand out to whoever your connection is and will be something that they definitely remember. So when an opportunity does come around, you'll hopefully then be top of mind for them.
All right. So if you're listening live on Facebook right now, get those questions in, as we remind you a couple times. But if you're listening right now, do your research. Whether it's reaching out to somebody to just sit down and learn about their career or learn about what they do, whether it's you're getting ready for an internship interview, a job interview, do your research. Because when you come into a room that I'm sitting in about to interview somebody, and I'm sure this goes the same for Nathan and you, Ilsa, as well. When you come back at me with facts about myself and where I went to school and what I do, that resume tends to find the top of the pile most of the time. So, that I think that's a huge key takeaway from today. I got a message here from Nathan. We got a bunch of great Facebook questions rolling in. I know he's got a few he wants to get to, so I'm going to throw it back to him with our next question from some of our Facebook audience.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to combine a couple of questions because I want to get everybody involved as best as I possibly can. So we got one question from Brandon. He's a student that recently graduated from UCF, and he said he's struggling to kind of break into the industry, right? So is there any kind of advice or encouragement you could offer him? And then Katie offered a question up, and she said, okay, you guys are talking about internships. You're talking about internships. What else could I do? If I'm not doing an internship, what other activities or things could she be doing to set herself up to maybe get one of those entry-level jobs that Brandon's looking for himself?
So, I think, again, experience is definitely something that I definitely look for. I mean, as you can imagine, whenever we have internship postings or job postings that, they are few and far that they come by in the NFL. So for us, we get inundated with a lot of resumes whenever a job posting is going on. So finding ways to set yourself apart and what makes you unique and you special compared to any other applicant, really, really think about that, whether it's an experience you've had or a job you've had. Think of ways that you can apply it to that job. But I mean, again, finding ways to get any sort of relevant experience or finding ways to make it relevant to whatever position you're applying for, if it's an experience you've already had, I think is really, really key to show how you can apply that and how you are the perfect candidate or the perfect fit for whatever that position is.
Let's kind of dive back into your career path, because we're talking so much about getting those experiences. And as I mentioned in the intro, you did spend time at Under Armour. How important was that for you to kind of get that entry level position, not only personally but professionally as well? And then, as we know, the Baltimore connection between the Ravens and Under Armour is great. Being right there in the same city. And did that job lead to any of these relationships that might have helped you land the job with the Ravens?
So I actually, before Under Armour, I was an intern at the Ravens during training camp in 2008. I was a marketing training camp intern, and then went back to my senior year in college. And then I actually had a job offer at Nike as a contractor. And then, for whatever reason that fell through. So I thankfully kept, again, the connections are key. I kept in touch with some of those coworkers that I had met in the marketing department when I was a training camp intern. And when they had a season-long internship available, my name became top of mind for that. And I was able to apply and get a season-long internship. However, that was going into the season where the lockout happened. So there was no possible full-time job after that, which is when then I went to Under Armour. So I had gotten a little bit of a taste, from July till December or so, the end of the season, of what life was like in the NFL. And I fell in love with it. I knew I loved that type of atmosphere and that community. But it wasn't in the cards for me to stay there. So I had to find something else and went to Under Armour, and was thankful to be with another Baltimore-based company, and one that was quickly growing and very fast-paced, and was a complete 180 from what life was like at the Ravens. So I think it was really good in that sense that I got to experience another company, on a completely opposite scale, and working with a wide range of athletes on their side. And sports, not just football. I ranged from skiing with Lindsey Vonn to basketball with some of their NBA players, and then, on all different levels too, on the high school and AAU level there, that it gave me a really, really good idea of, working with a bunch of different people that helped me then, realize even more so that I really enjoyed my time at the Ravens and that type of a company. And that, again, the connections are key, that I kept in touch with a lot of people at the Ravens, and new positions weren't added often, and people didn't leave because it's a great organization to work for, that a new position was added. And again, somebody had thought of me and reached out when they were adding and said, we think you might be a good fit for this if you're interested at all. And I definitely was interested. At that time when I came back, I was just focused on entertainment. I didn't have the events yet. So that was something, that it worked out really well that I applied for it and I got that job. So then I was able to transition back to the Ravens.
Being involved in football, obviously we're going to say here it's the best sport to be involved, because with the Hall of Fame, we're unapologetically football. We know the game of football teaches so much about, life off the field as well. And you have the unique perspective, you've kind of seen other sports, you mentioned basketball, winter sports, playing lacrosse. You've had a lot of different experiences in different sports, but after working with the Ravens and being involved with the game of football, how do you think the game of football can teach those who play it, watch it, coach it, are fans of it? What can the game of football teach them about their lives?
I think a lot of it also translates back to the skills that I talked about earlier that I learned even as a student athlete. But thinking on the professional football side, I think it teaches a lot of people about adversity. You see these players that they've put their whole focus, and their careers are football. They don't have a desk job off to the side like us. So that is their job. And they have to, the dedication and the discipline that they have for, staying in shape and, whatever it might be, to make sure that they're the ones that are playing and they're in the starting lineup, that, I think that's really admirable. And then any adversity that they have to overcome, whether it be an injury or, somebody else then all of a sudden having a breakout game and suddenly they're not the starter, that there's a lot of life lessons that you can definitely see from all these NFL players that are very admirable, that's, they followed their passion, from going back to what I said earlier, they really followed their passion and made it their job, which is really, really admirable.
So, and it's cool to look at the relationship between, playing the game of football and what it can teach you about your life. But I think, you talk about that example of the team atmosphere. That applies so well to the business world as well. You work for the Baltimore Ravens, and when people think of the Baltimore Ravens, they think of the team on the field. They think of Lamar Jackson. They don't think about what goes into to make sure so Lamar is able to perform well on Sundays. They don't think about all the work that goes into there. But that team atmosphere is so cool because it does trickle down throughout the entire both sides of the organization, both the football side, and the business side as well. Nathan's got more questions. He's biting at the bit to get some of those asked here. So we're going to throw it back to Nathan for our next question.
Yes, Jake, I am excited to ask these questions because we're getting great questions from all of our viewers here on Facebook. And I'm gonna stay with the trend I've started. I'm combining two questions. When I get the chance to talk, I'm gonna ask as many as I can. So, and I've got to ask these because they're both from the University of Oregon. We've got Alexis, and she says, if you're sitting here, I'm interviewing with you, do you value the degree that I'm in, the major that I've chosen, or do you value the experience that I have? So that's your first question.
Great question.
And then question number 2 is, from Cassidy, and she's also from the University of Oregon. And she says, is there something that you wish that you had taken better advantage of while you were in college, or something you would recommend, like, hey, you need to go take advantage of this because I did this while I was in college and it was a great experience? So I can repeat them if you forget, but those are the 2 questions I've got.
Okay, I think I'll remember them. The first, I think I'd personally say that I would put more emphasis on the experience someone has over the degree, because I know very well a lot of people in my department, what their degree was has nothing to do with what they do now. And I think, whatever degree you choose, that's totally fine and up to you. But I think, for whatever position you're trying to pursue, that experience is the most important to me, because it shows that, you've either learned things from there or you're looking to develop even further on that. But that you have relevant experience and you really know the world of which you're trying to apply for. And then the second part of your question, something I think I did, and I wish I had done it earlier on, but I'm glad I did it at least my senior year, was it really, really taking advantage of the resources you have at your disposal in school. I mean, especially myself as a student athlete, that I was in the athletic department every day. I was always there, the same building as all of our athletic directors and administrators daily. And I did not utilize those connections and those resources as much as I should have. I'm thankful my senior year, I finally did that. And again, pre-COVID, so not sure exactly how this would work now, but Oregon had just added a baseball team and they were getting ready to do their first season. And I wanted to learn more about the operations side. I wasn't sure if it was something I'd be interested in or not, but reaching out to the different associate athletic directors there and seeing if you can just shadow them for a day. It's not even necessarily an internship, but just shadowing them to really get a feel of, it's kind of like that informational interview, but actually in person and, on the job, was something that I did for a few days, and getting to see how they open the new stadium and how it operates daily and how a game works and all the behind the scenes stuff, that somebody was super willing to just have me kind of follow them around and ask them questions and take notes. That, again, most people will not turn that down. It obviously wasn't paid. It was just for me taking my own time to do it. And something that, I definitely kicked myself afterwards of, why didn't I do that more? Why didn't I do that for basketball or other sports to get a better idea and see if there was maybe a different league or team that I wanted to go pursue? But definitely glad that I at least did it before I left. So I would definitely say utilize the resources you have on campus. Again, most people will never turn down time to talk about themselves and how they got to where they are, or they'll never turn down free help. So definitely it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, I think that's great, because you don't have to be at the University of Oregon you know, a big school like that. You can be at a D2, a D3, an NAIA school. It doesn't really, a junior college. It doesn't matter. Like you said, people aren't going to turn down the opportunity to talk about themselves because it makes them feel good that you're coming to them for advice. And they're definitely not going to turn down your volunteer, your free help that you're offering. So that is a great way then to get that experience that you're talking about. So when you get that opportunity to interview, you can say, hey, look, I volunteered. I did this. I helped with this, you know, call this person. They're going to recommend me because I was there and I helped them. So that's really great information. So Jake, we're going to send it back to you to keep this rolling.
All right, thanks, Nathan. I'm actually going to steal a little bit of Nathan's thunder here because we're actually getting some emails with questions as well. And this is from Brandon, who has already asked a question, but I think this is such a really unique and great question. I wanted to make sure we got it in. It says, what is your opinion on the Nickelodeon broadcast? As somebody who's in, you know, events and entertainment, what's your opinion on that? And with brands collaborating with more odd combinations, and the examples Brandon gave were the Chicago Bears, Lyrical Lemonade, you have Gucci combining with North Face. What are your thoughts on those as somebody who works on the entertainment side? And has there any been, you know, the Ravens next in line? Are we going to see this crazy combo with the Ravens as well?
I don't know about that, but you know, back to the Nickelodeon broadcast, I thought it was super innovative and really cool. You know, I have kids, they're younger, but they definitely thought it was really neat to see, you know, Coach Payton get slimed at the end of the game and see slime pop up on the TV that, you know, they probably wouldn't have sat through a football game otherwise, to be honest, since they're so young. But they, you know, seeing that come up every once in a while for them, it was like a game of like, oh, what's going to happen next? So I thought it was really smart and innovative by them, and a way to get, you know, the next generation of football fans and the younger generation really engaged and in tune with football. So that is one reason why I really liked it. And I think you'll see more of it because of that, and that it performed really well in getting that next generation of fans really excited about football. And then I'm sorry, I forget the second part of your question.
It was about, you know, teams, you know, collaborating with some other, you know, things that don't really fit in the sports. And you kind of just touched on it there. You know, it's an ever changing, you know, atmosphere, and you know, you got to kind of stay up with the times. And if that means, you know, maybe going out on a limb and seeing what happens, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, hey, you know, we tried our best. So I think, you know, you kind of answered both questions along those lines. And I want to follow up with one, you know, kind of related to that. And it's about, you know, trying new things and trying to make yourself the best person you can be. You know, the league tried it with the Nickelodeon broadcast to reach that new segment of fans is their goal. So for you personally, though, what are some things you have done, you know, to help yourself become the best professional, the best director of events and entertainment? What are some of those professional development things you do to make sure you're on top of your game every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you're at a point where you think you have nothing more to learn, then I think then you're kind of stuck and you're not going to progress your career any further. So for me, it's definitely always trying to find, you know, doing research on what other teams are doing and what other leagues are doing, and just companies, you know, partners that we work with, or whether they're league partners, seeing what they're doing with other people, or with other, you know, whether it's leagues again, or just in the industry, and seeing what we can apply to our world and our brand, and see if it fits, or how can we make it even better and, you know, Ravenize it. So definitely challenging yourself to try and figure out what's the next best thing, and trying to be ahead of the curve is something that will always keep me on my toes. We definitely pride ourselves on that at the Ravens, and trying to be the first in doing something. And then, you know, it's flattering to us when someone replicates it and tries to make it better, or then we then have to challenge ourselves to take it another level up. So that, and especially now during COVID too, I think something else that's been really great is a lot of conferences and webinars have been offered and made free because everyone is at home. So definitely utilizing those opportunities to listen in. Again, even if the topic might not seem super relevant to my careers, if I have the time, making the time then to make sure I tune into it and see if there is anything I can apply to my job. And not just, you know, turning away from it because it's like, that probably might not necessarily do me much, but that I don't know until I actually tune in and listen to it. So I think those are definitely things that I've tried to do and still continue to do to try and improve my career.
Awesome. And I think Nathan's ready here for another question. So I'm going to throw it right back out to him. He says he got a great follow-up question on some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah, I do think I have a good follow-up. You know, you mentioned the Ravens trying to do new things and how that can kind of give you that sense of pride when you're the team that does that. You know, you guys mentioned the slime. You didn't mention SpongeBob was between the uprights when the kickers were kicking field goals. So if you can find a way to put SpongeBob in between the uprights, I think Justin Tucker would be a huge fan of that. You know, not just for us as the viewers, but I think the kickers would like that. So maybe you should do that. But no, that is not my follow-up question. We have a question though from Lily, and she attends Villanova, and she says she's a huge Ravens fan. Okay, so I had to get her involved. And you kind of touched on it earlier. You started talking about it there again. I'm sure you've been asked this question a ton and you spend a lot of time thinking about it. But how do you see the interactive landscape of football transforming post-COVID? You know, what changes are going to be permanent? And then what things are we like, okay, we got to get back to normal?
Oh, you know, there's a lot of things that I hope aren't permanent. But it's really hard to say, you know, because I think obviously, you know, the NFL has always put a big emphasis on making sure the playing field is level across all the teams. So that's going to be kind of hard to see how that's going to transpire as COVID, you know, as the vaccine comes out and people start to get that, because every state is going to be different on how that's working. So, you know, I'm not really sure on what it's going to look like post COVID. But I think there's a lot of things that we personally on our events team, you know, that I did mention earlier, that we've seen have been really successful and are really easy for us to execute and to continue to do year round, you know, whether COVID is still here or not. Something we started doing on our activation side and working with our fan groups was doing these different virtual tailgates pregame that our team started to do. And it was great because, again, it allowed people to tune in that were all over the world and outside of Maryland, that all they had to do was join a Zoom call and we could bring a legend to them and they got to hear from them. And it was like, well, why didn't we start doing this before? Like, this didn't have to be done just because of COVID, but I think it's something that, you know, they've definitely talked about keeping around even post-COVID. It's a great touch point. It's super easy for us to execute. It's not heavy lifting. That things like that will definitely stay around. And I think that'll always be something too that we keep in mind year round, even again post-COVID, of how can we incorporate an element for our events if we are able to be back in person, back to normal. I think we'll still always be trying to find a way to keep some sort of virtual component to it so that we can engage with those fans that aren't in Baltimore or can't be in Baltimore for whatever, you know, the date might be. But I hope, fingers, toes crossed, we can have in-person events again soon. With, you know, we're used to hosting thousands of fans for an event. So for us to, you know, scale down to, you know, whether it's 100 or whatever it might be, is going to be a really big change. So I hope we can get back to full capacity soon, and full capacity in the stadium. I mean, the atmosphere in our stadium on game day is unlike any other. So to have still worked all the games this past season and have been an empty stadium except for one game, and even then it was only 4,500 fans, was just, it was weird. And I miss our fans and I want them back.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think everybody in the sports industry would agree with you. I know us here at the Hall of Fame, you know, it's been weird. You know, the museum, there's not as many people touring the museum. We're looking forward to August with the enshrinement and the Hall of Fame game and everything that goes into that, you know, enshrinement week powered by Johnson Controls. Got to get the plug. You know, we're looking forward. We want fans here. We want to see people walking around here attending our events. And I've got another question from Facebook. It's not really related to what we're talking about, but that's okay. And this is from another colleague of yours, Joseph. I think we already get a question from him, but he says, you know, with your position, you know, working with events and entertainment, you get all kinds of feedback, you know, and I'm especially now, you know, virtually and everything. I'm sure you're getting feedback that's great, feedback that's you're terrible, this is awful. So how do you like find that balance when you're looking through all this feedback and go, oh no, that's actually a really good recommendation or suggestion by a fan, and no, they're just being bitter right now. Like, we actually did do our best, you know? So how do you work through that?
I mean, it's hard. I'd say that's probably one of the hardest parts of the job too. Sometimes, you know, especially when it comes to game day, is we could have just put on the best game day experience for our fans. We could have had, you know, an amazing gate giveaway. We've had a flyover, and then say we bring in a national recording artist to do the anthem or a halftime concert. And then if the team doesn't play well or they lose, then, you know, unfortunately, that's the last taste in our fans' mouth that they remember, and they don't remember the great experience that we just put on for them. So that's definitely one of the hardest things sometimes, is trying to find balance in that of like, okay, remember, we can't control the outcome on the field. We can only control everything else outside of that. And if we did the best that it could have possibly been, then we did our job well. So that's definitely hard because you're in the moment and it's hard to not take it personally sometimes of like, oh, you know, we just did this great thing and then the team lost and that's out of our control, and just trying to remember that. But especially an event too. I mean, we always do surveys afterwards and we get them after the game as well. And there's definitely a lot of great feedback that we've gotten from those. So we really appreciate the feedback from our fans. And like you said, sometimes trying to filter through and see, is it someone just bitter? Like maybe, you know, maybe it's our women's event that we typically do a ton of autograph sessions in, and maybe somebody's bitter that they didn't get an interaction with the player because they didn't get one of our autograph vouchers, and trying to figure that out of like, okay, well, did we offer enough? And if we did, for how many tickets there, then it's like, it's okay. You know, they're just upset that they didn't happen to get one of those opportunities, and trying to figure out, okay, how else can we add something for those that maybe don't get an autograph voucher, and try and create more touch points throughout the event. So there's definitely, taking some of those feedbacks with a grain of salt, but then some of them are really, really helpful. And we definitely look to implement them, you know, the following year. If it's an event that's multi-day, if we can implement it the next day, we definitely will. So we definitely take all that feedback to heart.
We got time here for just a few more questions. I want to follow up with two kind of the most important ones that we want to get to. And, you know, we talked a lot about networking and building relationships today. So for the people we have watching on Facebook, all those people who have asked questions today, if they wanted to connect with Ilsa Marden, the director of events and entertainment with the Baltimore Ravens, how would they go about that? And what are some ways to connect with sports industry professionals?
You know, I'd say for me, the best way is definitely LinkedIn. And, you know, don't just add me as an acquaintance on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message and tell me that you were a part of this, or this is how you, you know, heard about me and you want to connect and learn further. Because again, it's that little personal touch that takes it a little bit further and will make me that much more inclined to make sure I get back to you that much faster and continue that connection and see how I can help you. But with that too, if you see anyone else, you know, reach out to them, send those messages. People do read them. And again, find a way, look through their profile, try and find something you can relate to, or ask a question in there so that it encourages that person to make sure they respond to you and reply to you. That I think LinkedIn is a really, really great resource. It's just finding, you know, making sure you're using it the right way.
And then the last question I want to ask is, you know, we've talked a lot about different pieces of advice, whether it's, you know, you're trying to get your foot in the door, or you don't know what you want to do, or you're graduating, I want to get into the sports field, how do I get into that? If you can sum everything up, you know, we talked about today into that one nugget, that one piece of advice you want somebody watching to take away, or Nathan and I to take back to our desk with, what would that one piece of advice be that you want everybody to leave with today?
I probably have to go back to what I said earlier of like, just follow your passion. And if you continue to follow your passion, then you'll be happy and you'll find the right path for you. And just don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen right away for everyone. It takes time. I didn't get into the events and entertainment side where I'm really passionate now about what I do. And it took me probably 5-6 years, I think, is by the time I got to that. So don't be discouraged of other jobs you might have along the way that, you know, it might help pay the bills, but if it's not exactly what you're wanting to do, don't give up on that and continue to try and find ways to pursue that passion, because that's where you'll be happiest. And that's what's most important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, we are going to wrap up this latest installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series. Ilsa, thank you so much for being a part of the program today, taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us, all the students who tuned in today. Thank you so much for doing that. For all the students who tuned in, thank you so much as well. If we didn't get to your question today, well, you know, we're sorry. We only had so much time, but we have a bunch more of these. So make sure you tune in next Friday, ask that same question or a question that pertains to what we're talking about, and we'll do our best to make it a part of that program. Lastly, before we go, just some other information for you guys. For all of our college students out there watching right now, we do have internships here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame this upcoming summer. So go to our website, profootballhof.com. To our About tab, find our summer internships information, and you'll be able to apply for one of 12 different positions here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame to experience what the summer is like here in Canton, Ohio. And it's not cold and snowy. It's actually decent here in the summertime, some days. But experience our Enshrinement Week powered by Johnson Controls, and where the football world really comes to start. the new season. If you do like football content, make sure you subscribe to all of our pages. Subscribe, follow, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We have a great podcast hosted by a staff member here, my friend, great coworker, Mr. Jameer Howardson, called The Mission. He's right now going through interviewing all the finalists for our class of 2021 to hear about their career and everything they've gone through. So make sure you tune in to that as well. And like I said, next week, right here on Facebook, we'll be live January 29th, special guest Ashton Mullenix from the Detroit Lions. And you're going to want to tune into this one. He's got a very unique title. I'm not going to spoil it right now. He's got a very unique title and something that is kind of a hot topic in the NFL and in all sports today. So as I said at the beginning, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today without the great influence from all of our Hall of Famers, but truly everybody who has an impact on the game of football. And Ilsa, you're one of those. So thank you so much for all you do for the game. And thank you for everything you've done for us here at the Hall of Fame. But most importantly, thank you for being a part of our program today.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody who tuned in, thank you so much. We'll see you right here on Facebook, Pro Football Hall of Fame, next week for our Before the Snap series. Thank you. We'll see you next time, everybody.